My name is Boone McAllister. I'm a general contractor, and 2 years ago, the town I grew up in killed a man and called it a mercy. They didn't use a weapon. They used silence. Turned backs, unsigned petitions, job offers that vanished overnight. They made a school teacher into a monster because the truth would have destroyed something they cared about more. I'm the one who found what they buried. Not because I'm brave, because I build porches and pour concrete, and I couldn't stop noticing what didn't add up. The guy who frames walls ended up framing a case that put a state investigator in a council chamber with a folder full of evidence. And when it happened, when the truth finally hit that room, the most powerful man in town put both hands flat on the table, palms down, fingers spread, and didn't move. 40 people watched his face drain. Nobody breathed. If you're hearing this and you think you know how this plays out, you don't. Because what happened to Orrin Peak wasn't one man's decision. It was a vote. Quiet. Unanimous. And the thing that still keeps me up at night is that I understand why they did it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because this story goes places I still can't believe. And I don't want you to miss a single minute of it. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I want to know who's out there. It started in September of 2021, 3 days after a fire that changed everything. I need to take you back to that week. Because if you don't understand what Deerfield was before the fire, you won't understand what it became after. Deerfield is one of those towns where the past is literally under your feet. Headstones from the 1700s in the churchyard, street names that match the surnames on the mailboxes. The old Kendrick textile mill sat on the north end of town, hadn't operated since 1987, but still had the original sign bolted to the brick. People walked past it every day. Kids climbed through the broken windows on dares. I'd known Orrin Peak since he moved to town in 2016. He rented the apartment above the hardware store on Main Street. Quiet guy. 34 when he died. He had this way of talking to kids, steady, patient, like he had nowhere else to be. My daughter was in his 7th grade English class, and she'd come home quoting things he said about books like they were secrets he'd trusted her with. He kept a spiral notebook, green cover, dog-eared, where he tracked every student's tutoring schedule. He carried it everywhere. And he had this thing where he'd tap the cover of the notebook twice before opening it, like a little ritual every single time. On September 11th, 2021, the Kendrick Mill caught fire at around 9:40 p.m. By the time the volunteer department got there, the east wall had already come down. A 16-year-old named Tyler, everybody just called him Tyler, he was the kind of kid everyone in town knew, was found in the rubble the next morning. He'd been inside. Nobody could explain why. That fire is where this story starts. But the fire isn't what killed Orrin Peak. The town killed Orrin Peak. And I watched it happen. The first week after the fire was grief. Pure grief. Tyler's family, I won't name them, they've been through enough. They were wrecked. The whole town was. There was a vigil at the community center, flowers stacked against the mill fence, a GoFundMe that hit $12,000 in 2 days. The fire chief's preliminary report said the blaze started in the southeast corner of the mill, near old chemical storage. Possible accelerant. Possibly arson. And that word, arson, changed the air in Deerfield overnight. People wanted someone to blame. That's not a criticism. It's human. A 16-year-old was dead, and the idea that it was just an accident, just bad wiring in a building nobody maintained, that wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough. There had to be a reason. There had to be a person. Within 10 days, that person was Orrin Peak. I still don't fully understand how it happened so fast. The rumors weren't even consistent. One person told me Orrin had been seen walking near the mill that evening, but someone else said he was parked there. A woman at the grocery store said he'd had some kind of disagreement with Tyler's family, but another version had it as a disagreement with Tyler himself. The details contradicted each other, but the direction was always the same. It all pointed at Orrin, like separate streams feeding the same river.
And then Ward Fenn got involved.
Ward Fenn had been on the town council since 2006, council president since 2014. He was 71 years old, tall, thin, silver hair he combed straight back. He wore a navy blazer to every meeting like it was a uniform. People respected him. My father respected him. Ward organized the annual Founders' Day celebration, sat on the board of the Deerfield Historical Society, and had personally funded the restoration of the town bandstand in 2019. His family name was on the elementary school gymnasium. I was pouring a slab for a garden shed that morning. I remember because the mix was wrong and I had to redo it, when I got a call telling me Ward had pushed an emergency council session, September 22nd. My neighbor who worked part-time at town hall told me Ward stood up and said with that quiet voice of his that the community needed to take responsibility for protecting its children. He said the police investigation was moving too slowly. He said there were credible concerns about an individual in the community. He didn't say Orrin's name. He didn't have to. Ward looked right at the audience when he said it. I heard this from 3 people who were there, and he said, "We all know who we're talking about, and we owe it to Tyler's family to act." That's the first time I heard Ward Fenn decide who Orrin Peake was. It wasn't the last. By the end of that week, Orrin's tutoring program was shut down, not officially. The parents just stopped bringing their kids, one by one. No phone calls, no explanations. Orrin told me, I ran into him at the gas station on Route 5. He said, "I think people are afraid of me, Boone." He said it like he was confused, not angry, confused. I said something like, "Give it time," or "It'll blow over." I think it was a Tuesday, I'm not sure. It might have been Wednesday, I just remember it was raining. I didn't ask him if any of it was true. I didn't ask because I didn't think it was. But I also didn't say that out loud. And I've thought about that silence more times than I can count. The fire department's final report came out October 3rd. Cause of fire? Undetermined. No suspects named. No charges. But by then, it didn't matter. The town had already decided. Orrin lost his teaching position on October 15th. The school board cited community concerns and put him on indefinite leave. No investigation, no hearing, just a letter. I found out because my daughter came home crying. She said, "Mr. Peake isn't coming back," and she didn't understand why. I didn't have a good answer for her. What I did have was a growing feeling that something was wrong. Not just wrong like unfair, wrong like constructed. The rumors about Orrin were too clean, too coordinated. They all pointed the same direction and nobody could tell me where they came from. I started asking around, casually. At the hardware store, at the diner, at job sites. Who told you Orrin was near the mill? Every answer was the same. I heard it from somebody. Nobody had seen anything firsthand. Nobody had evidence. It was a closed loop, everyone referencing everyone else. And at the center, nothing. There was one lead that seemed real. A drifter, I'm not saying that as a judgment, it's just what he was, had been camping in the state forest off Route 5. Someone said he'd been seen near the mill, too. The fire chief mentioned it to me once offhand. Said the guy had a record. Said the state police had talked to him. I pulled the state police blotter for that week. It's public record, you can get it at the library. And the man was booked for a DUI in Greenfield, 23 miles away, at 8:47 p.m. on September 11th. He was in a holding cell when the fire started. So he was out, and Orrin was still in. And the thing that started eating at me, the thing I couldn't shake, was the fire investigation report itself. I got a copy through a public records request. Took 11 days and 3 follow-up calls, but I got it. 31 pages. I read it twice and almost missed it. The first time through, nothing stood out, but something nagged at me. The witness section felt short, so I went back. And on page 19, there was a section labeled Witness Statements. 4 names listed. But under the 4th name, the text just stopped, mid-sentence, like someone had deleted the rest of the paragraph and forgot to clean up the formatting. I asked the fire chief about it. He said it was a clerical error. He said it with his eyes on the floor. That was the moment I stopped believing this was just a town being scared. That was the moment I knew someone had taken a piece of the truth out of that report, and they didn't want anyone looking for it. A retired firefighter who lived near the mill seemed like he wanted to talk. We had coffee once. But then he stopped returning my calls. Dead end.
I need to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever found something in an official document
something that wasn't supposed to be there or something that was missing, and realized the system you trusted had been tampered with? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. Because 3 weeks after I pulled that report, Orrin Peake packed his car and left Deerfield, and nobody tried to stop him. Orrin left town on November 8th, 2021. I know the date because I watched him load boxes into his Subaru from my front porch. His apartment was 2 blocks from my house. He didn't have much. A few boxes of books, a suitcase, a laundry bag. The green notebook was tucked under his arm. I walked over. I didn't know what to say. He looked, sunken eyes. His clothes hung loose on him like he'd lost 15 pounds in a month. He didn't make eye contact at first. He said, "I didn't do it, Boone." I said, "I know." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "You're the only one who said that." I helped him load the last box. He drove north. I went back to my porch and sat there for maybe an hour. My daughter came out at one point and asked who was moving. I told her. She stood there for a second, and then she said, "Tell him I said thank you for the books." But he was already gone. I forgot to mention that she'd borrowed 3 paperbacks from Orrin's classroom shelf and never returned them. She still has them. My wife came out and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. 8 months later, mid-July 2022, Orrin Peake was found dead in his car on a logging road outside of town, somewhere north. The engine was off, the windows were up. The coroner ruled it suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning from a charcoal grill he'd set up in the back seat. I heard about it from my daughter's school principal, of all people. She called to let parents know in case kids had questions. My daughter didn't have questions. She just went to her room and didn't come out for the rest of the day. The funeral was in Orrin's hometown, somewhere in Connecticut. Nobody from Deerfield went. I called Orrin's sister Nessa to offer condolences. She was quiet on the phone. Then she said, "He told me about the fire. He told me what they did to him. He said a man named Boone was the only person who believed him." That phone call? I don't know. I can't describe what it did to me. I sat there holding the phone after she hung up, and I felt like I'd failed someone in a way I couldn't undo. And here's what I need to tell you. When I first heard how Orrin died, I accepted it. I did. For about 2 weeks, I thought, he was destroyed, he was alone. It makes terrible sense. I'm not proud of that. But I need you to know I didn't immediately suspect murder. Nobody did. Then Nessa called me back. The charcoal grill in Orrin's car, the one the coroner said he used, it was brand new. Still had the price sticker on it. $34.99 from a hardware store in Greenfield. Orrin didn't own a grill. He lived in a studio apartment. He never grilled anything in his life, according to Nessa. And the toxicology report, which Nessa got after 3 months of fighting for it, showed traces of Zolpidem in his system. Zolpidem, a prescription sleep medication. Orrin had no prescription for it, no history of insomnia, no bottle found in the car or in his belongings. Someone drugged him. Someone put him in that car, and someone lit that grill. Orrin Peake didn't kill himself. He was murdered, and the town that drove him out made it possible. I need you to understand something. This wasn't grief talking. This wasn't conspiracy. This was a toxicology report and a missing prescription and a brand new grill with a price tag still on it. Facts, and nobody in Deerfield wanted to look at them. I started my own investigation in August of 2022. I didn't tell anyone except my wife. She was worried. I understand that now, but she didn't try to stop me. My first step was the tutoring notebook. Orrin's green spiral notebook, the one he carried everywhere. Nessa told me Orrin had put most of his belongings in a storage facility in the next town over before he died. Month to month, paid through September. She gave me the key. I drove out there on a Saturday morning. The unit was small, maybe 8 by 10, boxes of books, a desk lamp, some clothes, and the notebook sitting on top of a cardboard box like it was waiting for someone to pick it up. I opened it. Page after page of tutoring schedules, dates, times, student initials, subjects. Orrin was meticulous. Every session logged. And on the page for September 11th, 2021, the night of the fire, there were 4 entries. 4 students. From 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at his apartment, 2 blocks from my house.
5 miles from the Kendrick Mill. Orrin couldn't have been at the mill. He was teaching kids.
I sat on the floor of that storage unit for a long time, holding that notebook. And I thought, this was here the whole time, this proof. And nobody ever asked for it. Nobody ever looked, because they didn't want to know. Around the same time, I started losing work. Town contracts I'd had for years, the library renovation, the community center siding project, routine stuff, started going to other contractors. No explanation, just, we're going in a different direction. 3 contracts in 6 weeks, about $47,000 in work, gone. My neighbor who worked at Town Hall told me she'd overheard Ward Fenn talking to the town manager. She said Ward called me a man who doesn't understand what this community needs right now. That scared me more than the contracts, because it meant Ward knew I was asking questions, and he wanted me to stop. I was afraid I'd lose my business, my reputation, and have nothing to show for it. But I kept imagining what it would look like if Orrin's name was cleared, if his students knew the truth, if my daughter could say, my teacher wasn't what they said he was, and have the whole town hear it. I didn't stop. One night, my daughter was already asleep. My wife and I were sitting on the couch, and she put her hand on my arm and said, "You look tired." That was all. She didn't say stop, she didn't say keep going. She just said I looked tired, and we sat there for a while without talking. It was the last quiet night I remember for a long time. I made copies of every page of Orrin's notebook. I got the full toxicology report from Nessa. I pulled the fire investigation report again and compared it to the original public records request. And I found something. The version on the town website had been updated, quietly. The truncated witness statement on page 19 was gone entirely. The section now read like it had always been 3 witnesses, not 4. Someone had edited a public document. I need to stop here for a second because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why didn't he just go to the police? And I need to tell you, Ward Fenn's nephew was the Deerfield police chief. His cousin ran the county clerk's office. The Fenn family didn't just sit on the town council. They were the infrastructure. Going to the local police with evidence against a Fenn meant handing your complaint to the people it was about. So I went outside. I called the Massachusetts Attorney General's office on September 6, 2022. I spoke to a woman in the Public Integrity Division. I told her everything. The fire, the framing, the altered report, the toxicology, the notebook. She took notes. She asked careful questions. She said someone would follow up. If the whole system was run by one family, the police, the clerk's office, the council, would you trust an outsider to fix it? Or would you try to handle it yourself? I've thought about that question 100 times. Tell me what you'd do. I'm genuinely curious. Because the AG's phone call was a bet. I was betting that someone outside Deerfield would care about what happened inside it. And the answer to that bet was still 4 months away. October through December of 2022 was the hardest stretch. The AG's office was, I'll call it methodical. They weren't fast. A state investigator named Pruitt contacted me in late October. He was calm, professional, asked me to walk him through everything chronologically. He came to Deerfield twice, quietly, no official vehicle, met me at a diner in Greenfield both times. Pruitt told me he couldn't share details of the investigation. He said, "Mr. McAllister, if what you're telling me is accurate, this is bigger than a fire." He didn't elaborate, I didn't push. But he mentioned something about timelines, that there were statute considerations that made the next few months critical. He said it once and didn't repeat it. I didn't need him to. Meanwhile, in Deerfield, things were getting strange. My truck got keyed in the parking lot at the grocery store. No witnesses, no cameras that covered that row. Someone left a note in my mailbox. Not threatening exactly, just a folded piece of paper that said, "Leave it alone." Block letters, black marker. I showed it to my wife. She didn't say anything, she just put it in the kitchen drawer and closed it. For about a week after that, nothing happened. I went to work, I measured boards, I ate dinner. I started wondering if I'd overreacted to everything. If maybe the keyed truck was random. The note was some teenager, and Orrin's death really was what the coroner said. A week of doubt. It sat in my stomach like wet sand.
Then my wife mentioned that a work call had come in. Someone needed a porch railing repaired. Normal stuff. I drove out, did the estimate, and on the way back I stopped for gas and the attendant asked me about the Patriots game. I stood there for 5 minutes talking about football, and I remember thinking, this is what my life is supposed to feel like. This ordinary thing. And then I went home and saw Pruitt had called. Ward Fenn, for his part, was acting like everything was normal. He chaired the November council meeting. He gave a speech at the Founders' Day dinner about Deerfield's resilience. He shook hands, he smiled. He was good at that, being the version of himself people expected. But I noticed things, small things, like the way he'd look at me when we crossed paths at the post office. Not hostile, almost sad, like he was sorry for something he hadn't done yet. I didn't know what to make of it then. I still don't entirely. And then in November, I found out who actually started the fire. It wasn't a revelation, it was an accident. I was doing a siding job on a house across town, and the homeowner, older woman, been in Deerfield since the 70s, she was making conversation while I worked. She mentioned the fire. She said her grandson, he'd been 17 at the time, told her he'd seen Cole Fenn at the mill that night. Cole Fenn, Ward Fenn's grandson, 20 years old in 2021. She said her grandson told her this in confidence, and she'd never repeated it until now. She said it so casually, like she was telling me the weather. Cole Fenn, the council president's grandson, at the mill on the night of the fire. This was it. This was the proof that the whole thing was a cover-up. I could feel my hands shaking while I held the siding in place. I thought, finally, someone saw him. I asked her if her grandson would be willing to talk to someone. She said absolutely not. She said, "We don't cross the Fenns, Mr. McAllister. You know that." And I did know that. That was the whole problem. I passed the information to Pruitt. He didn't react, just wrote it down. But I could tell, the way his pen paused, that it confirmed something he'd already been looking at. And there was something else Ward probably hadn't thought about. His whole attack on me, the lost contracts, the license review, the note, it was all designed to make me stop. But every threat he made gave Pruitt more evidence of a pattern. Ward was building the case against himself and didn't know it. Subscribe, because what Ward did next made that threatening note look like a greeting card. I want to ask you this. If you knew a family was protecting the person who set a fire that killed a teenager, and the whole town was afraid to say it, would you keep going? Even if it cost you work, friendships, your peace of mind? Or would you decide it wasn't your fight? I'm not judging either answer. I'm genuinely asking, because I almost stopped. Twice. My wife asked me to stop. She said, "Boone, Orrin is gone. Nothing you do brings him back." And she was right. She was absolutely right. But the notebook was in my filing cabinet, and Orrin's voice, "You're the only one who's said that." I couldn't unhear it. The next part of this story is where Ward Fenn showed me exactly who he was, and I need you to hear it, because what he said to me in January of 2023, I'll never forget it. January 9th, 2023. I was at the hardware store on Main Street, the same building where Orrin used to live. I was picking up lag bolts for a deck project. Ward Fenn walked in. He came straight to me, no small talk. He picked up a box of finishing nails from the shelf next to me, turned it over in his hands like he was reading the label, and then, without looking up, he put his hand on my shoulder, firm like a father, and he said, "Boone, I've always liked you. Your father was a good man. I need you to hear me when I say this." I waited. There was a customer 2 aisles over. I could hear her cart squeaking. He said, "Orrin Peake was a troubled young man who made bad choices and couldn't live with the consequences. That's a tragedy. But the tragedy is his, not ours. And if you keep trying to make it ours, you're going to find out that this town has a long memory and a short patience." He said it like he was giving me advice, like he was doing me a favor. I said, "Orrin was 5 miles away from that mill when it burned, Ward. I've got his schedule."
He looked at me, and for maybe half a second his face changed. Not fear, not anger, something behind both of those things. He adjusted his glasses, glanced toward the front counter. Then the mask was back. He set the finishing nails down and walked out. Didn't buy anything. I stood there holding my lag bolts, and my heart was going so fast I could feel it in my teeth. Not from fear, from anger. Because he knew. He knew Orrin was innocent, and he was telling me, calmly, politely, with his hand on my shoulder, to let a dead man stay guilty. Here's what I've learned from all of this. The people who hold a town together and the people who hold a town hostage can be the same people, and you don't know which one you're looking at until someone gets hurt. 3 weeks later, January 31st, I got a call from the building inspector's office. My contractor's license was being reviewed. Routine review, they said. 16 years licensed in Franklin County. No complaints, no violations. And now, suddenly, a routine review. I called Pruitt. He said, "Stay the course, don't react." Easy for him to say. He didn't live here. But I'll tell you what, and this is the part that still amazes me. Nessa Peak drove up from Connecticut that February. She showed up at my house on a Sunday afternoon with a box of Orrin's papers, report cards he'd saved, thank you notes from students, a letter from a parent saying Orrin was the reason her son graduated. Nessa sat at my kitchen table and she didn't cry. She just said, "My brother deserved better than this. Whatever you need from me, I'm here." She wasn't an investigator. She wasn't brave in the way people think of brave. She was a woman who loved her brother and refused to accept the story they wrote about him. She came back to Deerfield 4 more times over the next 2 months. She never stayed overnight. She said the town made her skin crawl. I understood that. In February, I learned something else. The teenager who died in the fire, Tyler, his phone records showed a text message received at 9:17 p.m. on September 11th. The message said, "Come to the mill. East door open." The number was a prepaid phone, untraceable. Tyler didn't wander into that mill by accident. Someone brought him there. And here's where it got truly ugly. Because when I compared the timeline, the text at 9:17, the fire starting around 9:40, Cole Fenn seen at the mill that evening, a picture formed that I didn't want to see. Cole Fenn didn't just start a fire. He lured a kid into a building and set it on fire. I don't know if he meant to kill Tyler. I don't think he did. But I think he meant to burn the mill, for reasons I'll get to. And he didn't care enough to make sure it was empty first. And Ward Fenn, grandfather, council president, pillar of the community, knew. He knew. And he let Orrin Peak take the blame. And he watched Orrin get destroyed. And when Orrin ended up dead on a logging road, Ward went to the Founders' Day dinner and talked about resilience. That's who Ward Fenn was. By March of 2023, the state investigation was moving. Pruitt told me, carefully, in that way investigators talk when they can't tell you what they know, that additional evidence has been identified consistent with your account. I asked what that meant. He said, "It means you should come to the next council meeting, Mr. McAllister." The meeting was scheduled for April 3rd. 5 weeks away. 5 weeks. I've never experienced time like that. I couldn't focus. I'd measure a board 3 times and still cut it wrong. I had a bathroom remodel going, and I kept forgetting what I'd already done. Did I run the PEX line or not? I'd stand in the middle of a gutted bathroom and just stare at the studs. Are you still with me? Because this next part is the one I've played back in my head 1,000 times. The weather turned in late March. Cold rain for days, then a false spring. 60 degrees, sun, mud everywhere. I remember pulling into a job site, and the ground was so soft my truck left ruts in the driveway. I sat there for a minute, looking at the ruts and thinking about what Pruitt would say at that council meeting, what Ward would do, whether the room would believe it. My wife could tell something was coming. She said, "Whatever happens, Boone, we'll be okay." I think she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I did one thing during those 5 weeks that I hadn't done before. I talked to other people in town. Not about the investigation, about Orrin. I went to parents whose kids had been in his tutoring program. I asked them if they believed Orrin set that fire. Most didn't want to meet. One woman changed the subject to her kitchen remodel. Another got angry and told me to stop bringing it up. One couple invited me in and then sat across from me without speaking for what felt like a full minute. Of the ones who actually answered, 4 said they didn't believe Orrin set the fire. 2 said they weren't sure. One, a woman I'd talked to before at the community center, said, "I knew it wasn't him the whole time. I just didn't say anything because..." And then she stopped. She said, "Because I was afraid." I asked the fire chief one more time. I went to his house. His wife answered the door. She called him. He came to the doorway and looked at me, and I asked him, straight out, whether the 4th witness statement had been removed at Ward's direction. He stood there. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door. Didn't say a word. That silence told me everything. I don't hate any of them for it. I want to. But I've lived in this town long enough to know what fear looks like when it wears the face of community loyalty. You don't cross the fence. You don't question the council. You keep your head down, you go to the potluck, you smile at the people who smile at you. And if someone gets hurt, well, that's not your problem, right? That's how a community sacrifices someone. Not with a vote, not with a ritual, with silence, with looking away, with choosing comfort over truth because the truth is too expensive and someone else is paying the price. Would you have spoken up? Would you have been one of the 4 who knew, or one of the 7 who stayed quiet? I'm asking because I almost stayed quiet too. I want to be honest about that. Drop your answer in the comments. No judgment from me, I mean that. April 3rd, 2023. Council meeting night. I put on a clean shirt. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I went in. I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing through the open window. My hands were steady, but my jaw was clenched so tight my back teeth ached. I opened the door and walked in. The council chamber in Deerfield Town Hall holds about 60 people. That night, maybe 40 showed up. Routine meeting, budget items, road maintenance proposals, a zoning variance for a property on the east side. Ward Fenn sat at the center of the council table. Navy blazer, reading glasses, coffee in a paper cup. He called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. sharp. I sat in the 3rd row, left side. Nessa sat next to me. She was wearing a gray sweater, and she had her hands folded in her lap, and she didn't move for the first 30 minutes. She barely blinked. The first 4 agenda items went normally. Roads, budget, the zoning thing. People spoke. Ward nodded. He made notes on a yellow legal pad. Someone coughed. A phone buzzed, and a woman in the 2nd row fumbled to silence it. Ward made a comment about silencing devices, and a few people laughed. Normal meeting. The kind of meeting where you check your watch and wonder why you came. Then, at 7:38 p.m., the rear door of the chamber opened. Pruitt walked in. He was wearing a suit. He had a man and a woman with him. I later learned they were from the AG's Criminal Bureau. Pruitt carried a single folder. Brown, not manila. Slim. Maybe 20 pages inside. Ward looked up, and I watched. I will never forget this. I watched his pen stop moving. It just froze. Mid-word. His eyes went from Pruitt to me, then back to Pruitt, then to the folder. Pruitt walked to the front of the room. He introduced himself. He said he was there representing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Attorney General's Office, Public Integrity Division. He said his office had conducted a 4-month investigation into the death of Orrin Peak and the Kendrick Mill fire of September 2021. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Pruitt opened the folder. He said, calmly, like he was reading a weather report, that their investigation had determined Cole Fenn, age 20 at the time and grandson of Council President Ward Fenn, set the fire at the Kendrick Mill. That Cole Fenn had texted a prepaid message to Tyler at 9:17 p.m., directing him to the mill. That Cole Fenn ignited accelerant in the southeast storage area at approximately 9:35 p.m. That Tyler was trapped by the collapse of the east wall. A chair scraped somewhere behind me. Someone whispered something I couldn't make out. Pruitt paused. He turned a page. Ward's right hand had started trembling, just the fingers, a small vibration against the table surface that I could see from the 3rd row. Pruitt continued.
He said their investigation had further determined that Ward Fenn became aware of his grandson's involvement within 72 hours of the fire. That on approximately September 14th, Ward directed the alteration of the fire investigation report, specifically the removal of a witness statement identifying Cole Fenn at the scene, and that Ward initiated a coordinated campaign to redirect suspicion toward Orrin Peak.
Then Pruitt said something I hadn't known, something Boone McAllister, the contractor sitting in the third row, did not see coming. He said the investigation had uncovered evidence that a member of the town council had objected to the scapegoating effort in a private session on September 23rd, one day after the emergency meeting, and that Ward had threatened to expose a personal financial matter to force that member's silence. The council vote to support the community's safety concerns, the vote that effectively endorsed Orrin's destruction, was unanimous, but it wasn't voluntary. My ears were ringing. I had my hands gripped on the edges of my chair, and I could feel the metal cutting into my palms, but I didn't let go. Pruitt said the evidence supporting these findings had been provided in part by a Deerfield resident. He held up a photocopy. I recognized the green cover, the handwriting, the tutoring schedule for September 11th, Orrin's notebook, the proof that had been sitting in a storage unit while a man's life was taken apart. He said, Mr. Peak was subsequently terminated from his teaching position, expelled from the community, and found dead on July 14, 2022. The toxicology report showed the presence of zolpidem, a substance Mr. Peak had no prescription for. The manner of death has been reclassified pending further investigation. He closed the folder. The room was frozen. 40 people. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And then Ward stood up. He looked at the room, not at Pruitt, not at me, at the room, at the people he'd served for 15 years. He said, "Everything I did for this town. You have to understand that. Cole is a boy. He made a mistake, and I made a choice to protect him, to protect all of us, from what would have happened if the truth came out." He looked at me then, directly at me, and he said, "You don't build a town, Boone. You just build things in it." He said it like he believed it, all of it. That's the part that destroyed me. He wasn't lying. He genuinely believed that sacrificing Orrin Peak was the right thing to do. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to stand. I just stood. And I said it quiet because I didn't trust my voice not to break. I said, "His name was Orrin. He taught kids how to read." Ward looked at me, and there it was again, that flash of something behind his eyes. Not guilt. Worse. Recognition. He knew exactly what he'd done. He'd always known. He sat back down. Nessa was crying beside me, silent tears. She reached over and squeezed my wrist once, hard. Then she let go. I walked out of that room before anyone else moved. I got to my truck and sat in the driver's seat, and my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I just sat there, engine off, parking lot lights buzzing. I stared at the dashboard, and I couldn't think. My body was doing something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I don't know how long I sat there, 5 minutes, maybe 15. Things moved fast after that. Cole Fenn was arrested 2 days later at his apartment in a college town 20 miles east, charged with involuntary manslaughter and arson resulting in death. His bail was set at $250,000. His family posted it. Ward Fenn resigned from the council on April 7th. No statement, no press conference, just a one-paragraph letter delivered to the town clerk's office at 8:15 a.m. 15 years, reduced to 4 sentences. The AG's office opened a formal investigation into Orrin's death. Pruitt told me he was more open now, less guarded, that they were looking at obstruction, tampering with official records, and potential conspiracy charges related to Orrin's reclassified death. He said, "This could take a while, Mr. McAllister." And he was right. It took a while. But the immediate aftermath, those first 2 weeks, were something I wasn't prepared for. The council member who'd been silenced, I won't name them, resigned the same week as Ward. Their statement was one sentence: "I should have spoken sooner." That was it. No explanation, no defense. The town didn't know what to make of it until the AG's filing became public. Some people came to me. Parents from the tutoring program, neighbors, the woman at the gas station who'd watched Oren pack his car. They said things like, "I should have said something," and "I'm sorry, Boone." And I appreciated that, I did. But it also made me angry, because they were apologizing to me, and the person they owed the apology to was dead. Other people, and this surprised me, were angry at me. Not at Ward, not at Cole, at me, for bringing this into the open, for disrupting things. A contractor I'd known for 20 years said to me at the lumberyard, "You think this helps anyone, Boone? Tyler's still dead, Oren's still dead. All you did was make everybody feel like shit." I wish I'd said good. What I actually said was nothing. I just picked up my lumber and walked out. I didn't have a good response for that, because he wasn't entirely wrong. The truth didn't bring anyone back. It didn't rebuild what was broken. It just took the comfortable lie away and left everyone standing in the mess. The school board issued a statement acknowledging that Oren Peak had been unfairly separated from his position. They used the word regret, not apologize. Regret. Nessa read that statement on her phone in my kitchen. She set the phone down and said, "Regret. They regret it." Then she laughed, just once. A short, sharp sound. And then she said something I think about all the time. She said, "Oren would have forgiven them. That's the kind of person he was. And that's why they were able to do it." I'm telling you, that line hit me harder than anything Ward ever said. Oren's funeral was reinterpreted in a way. The Deerfield Community Center held a memorial service in May. It was small, maybe 30 people. There was a photo of Oren on the stage. He was smiling, holding a basketball, wearing a Deerfield Youth League t-shirt. Someone had printed excerpts from his students' thank you letters and pinned them to a board. My daughter read one of them out loud. She was 14. Her voice shook, but she got through it. The letter said Oren was the reason one of his students stopped hating school. I stood in the back of that room, and I thought, this is what they tried to erase. This man, this teacher, this person who spent 3 nights a week helping other people's kids for free. They turned him into a monster because it was easier than telling the truth about one of their own. And the thing that haunts me, the thing that won't let go, is that it worked. For almost 2 years, it worked. The town moved on. Oren's name became a dark whisper. Nobody questioned it, because the alternative, admitting that the most respected family in Deerfield produced an arsonist and a cover-up artist, was too much. The town chose its own comfort over a man's life. That's what a sacrifice is. Not a decision, a reflex. The whole town looking away because looking forward was too hard. Subscribe if you're still here. Hit like. Not for me, for Oren. Because this story needs to be heard, and every click makes that more likely. 7 months later, November 2023, Cole Fenn pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. He was sentenced to 6 to 8 years. At the sentencing, Tyler's mother read a victim impact statement. I wasn't there, but Nessa was. She told me Tyler's mother said 3 sentences and then couldn't continue. The judge had to call a recess. Ward Fenn was indicted in September 2023 on charges of tampering with public records, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. His trial was scheduled for the following spring. At the time I'm telling you this, it hasn't happened yet. He's out on bail. He still lives in Deerfield. I see him sometimes, at the post office, at the grocery store. He doesn't look at me. He looks through me. His wife left him in October, moved to her sister's place out of state. That was something I didn't expect to feel anything about, but I did. I felt bad for her. She didn't start that fire. She didn't write that false report. She just married a man who believed he was above the truth. And when the bill came due, she was standing next to him. The Fenn name came off the elementary school gymnasium in December. They voted on it at a council meeting, the new council, all new faces except 2 holdovers. The vote was 7 to 2. The 2 who voted no said it was because they didn't want to erase history. Nessa, who'd driven up for the meeting, said afterward, "They're worried about erasing history. They already erased a person." The investigation into Oren's death is ongoing. The AG's office hasn't filed charges yet. The evidence is circumstantial, the chain of events hard to prove beyond reasonable doubt. Nessa hired a private forensic consultant who confirmed the Zolpidem finding and identified inconsistencies in the carbon monoxide levels. It's slow. It might not result in a conviction. That's the bittersweet part of this that I can't dress up or make sound like a victory. Orrin Peake was murdered. I believe that completely. And it's possible that no one will ever be formally held responsible for his death.
My contracting business recovered. Slowly. Some clients came back. Some didn't. I lost one friendship I'd had since high school. An old friend who told me I'd torn the town apart. I don't miss the friendship, but I miss who he used to be before all this, if that makes sense. My daughter, she's 15 now. She started a tutoring group at the community center, 3 nights a week. She calls it the Peak Program. She didn't ask my permission, she just did it. When I asked her about it, she said, "Somebody had to." I cried in my truck after that. First time I'd cried through this whole thing. Not because I was sad, because I realized Orrin's legacy wasn't the fire or the frame-up or the silence. It was a 15-year-old girl sitting at a folding table helping a kid with fractions, because a teacher she barely knew showed her what it meant to care. That's what they couldn't sacrifice. That's what survived. Nessa and I talk every few weeks. She's back in Connecticut. She's working on a wrongful death civil suit against the Fenn family. She told me she doesn't expect to win. She said, "It's not about the money. It's about making them say his name in a courtroom." I understand that. I want to thank you for staying with me through this. Seriously, this wasn't an easy story to tell. I've told pieces of it, to lawyers, to investigators, to my wife at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, but I've never told the whole thing, beginning to end, to someone who wasn't already involved. And it means something that you're here, that you listened. There are things I left out, small things. The way the hardware store smelled the day Ward confronted me. Sawdust and machine oil, same as always. The sound of Nessa's car pulling into my driveway those Sunday afternoons. The look on my daughter's face when she read that letter at the memorial. I didn't include everything because some of it is just mine, but I wanted you to know it exists. If Orrin's story made you feel something, anger, grief, recognition, anything, I'd ask you to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the numbers, because there are more stories like Orrin's, towns that decided someone was expendable, communities that chose silence because the truth was too inconvenient. And every time one of these stories reaches another person, the silence gets a little thinner. Leave me a comment. Tell me, has your town ever sacrificed someone? Not in the dramatic way, in the quiet way. The we don't talk about that way. The way where everybody knows and nobody says. I want to hear your story, because I think there are more of us than we realize. And if you want to hear more, there are other stories on this channel. People who found the truth when everybody told them to stop looking. Click on whatever's next. I'll be here. I'm going to leave you with this. Last month, I drove past the Kendrick Mill site. They tore it down last summer. It's just a flat patch of gravel now with a chain-link fence around it and a sign that says, "Future site of Deerfield Community Park." There's a bench already installed at the edge of the lot, donated by the Historical Society. No plaque on it yet. I sat on that bench for a while. It was cold. My coffee was in my truck, but I didn't go get it. I just sat there, looking at the empty space where the mill used to be, and I thought about Orrin sitting at his kitchen table with that green notebook, tapping the cover twice before opening it, logging tutoring sessions nobody would ever check. A school bus went by. The driver honked. I waved. Then I got up and went back to work.